Service. What's up, podcast listeners? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Full Service Podcast. I am your host, Hank Smith. Hey, welcome back. It's Tuesday. What's up? No, it's this is episode 8 of the podcast. 8. Who knew we'd make it here, baby? We got a bunch more to go. It's Ocho. But no, thanks for tuning in. You could be anywhere. You could be listening to anything. So, thanks for joining us. Like I mentioned at the end of last week's episode, I got a solo for you today. It's just me. It's just me and you. We're gonna take this car ride together. It'll be good. It'll be a good time. Shout out to last week's guest, Seductive Storm. If you didn't give her a follow on social media, what are you doing? Why do you have social media if you're not following the guests on the podcast, and especially me? Let's everybody that comes on the podcast, give them a follow. You don't have to follow me though. That's cool. But no, follow Storm. Her Twitter is at SupergirlStorm. And if you have not listened to that episode yet, you should stop what you're doing. Stop the car. Go home. Don't go to work today. Call in sick to work. You're listening to the Storm podcast. But no, that was a good time. If you haven't listened to it, seriously stop the episode and go back and listen to it. We talk about a lot of different things. She worked as an escort for like 18 years. She has her own company that does web design, marketing, branding, mentorships, search engine optimization for people. So fucking check it out. It's an awesome business. It was a fun ass interview. I don't. A lot of people actually reached out to me and they enjoyed it. So no, Storm's real as fuck. Shout out to Storm. That was a good time. But no, thanks. This is week 8. I feel like I haven't really talked about the podcast at all. Like both solo episodes kind of really didn't have to do with like how the podcast is going, updates. So I kind of wanted to do that a little bit. In the intro and outro of every episode, I try to make it kind of quick because I know that a lot of the interviews kind of run long. So I'm like, I don't want to fucking put a bunch of bullshit up front or at the end you gotta listen to. So I try to keep the intros and outros pretty quick. But I feel like I haven't really talked about how the podcast is going on, what's going on with me, kind of plans for the podcast. So I kind of want to do that today. And I know I mentioned actually in the second episode that I had done an AMA on Instagram. And so I kind of want to give you those questions that people reached out to me with and the answers. So no, and everybody who asked a question, I fucking appreciate that. That helps out creating content. That's what this podcast is all about. Not really, but hey, we do what we do, baby. We got all right. But no, it's I'm recording this. Usually I record on Sunday. It's Monday right now. It is 9:15 p.m. And I said I would have this out by midnight. So damn it, that's gonna happen. I actually recorded this episode yesterday on Sunday. And then I listened to it. I recorded it like 1 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes I do shit like super late. I recorded it at like 1 a.m. Sunday night, and I listened to it this morning, and I was like, that is terrible. That is... I sent it to my buddy. I'll like usually like try to run the episode by somebody before I release it. And so I sent it to my buddy, and I was like, hey, can you check it out? And then he was like, dog, bro, I thought it was that was sad as fuck, dude. I don't know what you were doing, but it was pretty sad. So and I agreed. I gotta re-record shit. I gotta make it sound good. I gotta make them car. If you're driving to work and you're just like sad listening to a podcast on the way to work, you don't want to listen to that podcast. So I'm trying to make your car ride better. Your workout better. Whatever you do when you listen to walking through the neighborhood. Maybe you're on I don't know, whatever you're doing. You're rock climbing. You're fucking I don't really listen to podcasts. I don't know where people listen to podcasts. So, but whatever you're doing while you're listening to this podcast, we're trying to make that better by this podcast. So, I had to re-record it. Can't be putting out some bullshit. But no, thanks for being here. I want to so some stats on the podcast. I ever had I do the podcast through Libsyn. Libsyn hosts the podcast. So they give me some stats about the podcast. So far, this is actually day 49. So I released the podcast October 1st on Libsyn, and that pretty much released it everywhere. We got it on like Apple, we got it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play Music, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, some other shit I never even heard of. I'm like, I didn't even submit it to that. How's it on there? But yeah, it's up. So it's 49 days since we started, and we've had the podcast in 10 countries, baby. I don't know what to expect, doing a podcast. This is the first time I've done a podcast. 10 countries in 2 months. I'll take that shit. You know what I'm saying? Fuck yeah. We got the US, Mexico, Canada, England, France, Germany, Finland. We got Saudi Arabia. Well, listen to Saudi Arabia. What are you doing, dog? Hell yeah. And the Czech Republic. So I'm excited about that. I'm trying to let's get it all over the world. I'm surprised Saudi Arabia allows this shit, but hey, fucking free internet, baby. Hell yeah. We've been in 33 states so far. Georgia is the top. We got Georgia coming in hot, number one. North Carolina coming in number two, and Virginia at number three. The top cities that listen to the podcast: Atlanta, shout out. Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, RDU area coming in at number two, and DC at number three. So no, if you're no matter where you listen to the podcast from, I really fucking appreciate it. But yeah, fuck yeah. Yeah, I didn't know starting this podcast. I was like, who's gonna listen to this? Who wants to hear me talk for any amount of time? Actually, some people do actually, but into a microphone it's a little bit different because I can't hear reactions. Normally I'm used to saying something, and either you laugh or you don't laugh. But now you're just I don't even know. There's a space in between. Uh, I need to stop smoking weed. Maybe that's what it is. I'm like, there's not people on the other side of this microphone, so it's kind of weird. But no, it's it's I can't do this podcast without the guests I've had on so far. So if you've anybody that I have on and that I've like interviewed with and haven't released yet, I really do appreciate you coming on the podcast because it's hard to convince somebody to talk about themselves and talk about a lifestyle that may be stigmatized, and also just talk to a stranger about this thing, and especially something that's going to be recorded and it's going to be on the internet and it lasts. So it is. I can understand people's hesitancy to do this. Um, when I originally started, I didn't know how. I didn't know if this would even be possible. I mentioned a lot. I'm a hopeful person, so I'm like, pretty much anytime I'm like, anything is possible, no matter what you want to do, follow your dreams. That's pretty much how I feel. I don't know why. Maybe it's too much Disney Channel as a kid. I watched a lot of Disney Channel, a lot of Disney Channel original movies. Shout out to Disney Plus is out there right now. If you got Disney Plus, fucking watch Brink, Johnny Tsunami, fire movies. If I were to watch them now, it'd probably be like these movies fucking suck. But Xenon still holds up. I saw that a couple years ago. Fire. They had iPads and shit in the 90s, like 2001. Zetus Lapidus, what's going on? All right. Just going to be a bunch of Disney references in this episode. But no, I guess I'm I guess I'm like hopeful. So I was like, I think I could do this podcast. I did two in North Carolina before I moved. But really one, I guess I interviewed, the first one I did was with Haley. I haven't released that episode yet. And the second interview I did was with Daisy. That I released that actually on SoundCloud, but I have not released that episode as well. But when I was reaching out to people originally for the podcast, All I had was basically was a Daisy interview because it was kind of short. It's maybe like 35 minutes, and that's basically what I was sending to people, letting them know, hey, I want to do a podcast. I'm a comedian where we basically talk about sex work. I kind of interview you, kind of like find out what your experience has been. And through talking about it, hopefully we can like destigmatize like sex work, you know. And that's I understand that it's there's coming from someone who's like I guess I'm a client. I guess I see escorts. I pay them money, you know, to hang out. So I think first off, starting from that point and saying like, hey, I'm gonna do a podcast about sex work, you know, it could be looked on a couple ways. And I definitely I definitely understand. It'd be like it's this client's gonna start a podcast about fuck you, dog. What do you what makes you think that you have the right to fucking talk about something else like that? So I mean, I definitely understand people's hesitancy to even fuck with the podcast at all. And if you have so far, I know there's been clients that have listened to this podcast. There's been escorts that listen to this podcast that have reached out and they've said they've enjoyed it. And if you have listened to the podcast, like I really do appreciate it because without listeners, it's me talking to someone else, you know. And as much as as much as that's awesome, you know, it is. I enjoy talking to other people, but being able to share other people's story and have other people hear it and I guess benefit from it is what we're really trying to do. And yeah, anybody I've reached out to a lot of people and it's been a lot of rejection, I guess, but the I understand why people can't do the podcast. I've had people like, "Oh, hey, I can't like just I can't have my voice, but I mean I'd love to do it, but I can't have my voice. Like I don't want to talk about my like personal things." And I understand that going in because that's it's your life, you know. You can't like there's fucking creeps out. There's fucking internet. I don't trust anybody on the goddamn internet, you know. But if you have been on the podcast, if you've reached out to me even to say, "Hey, no, I can't do the podcast," I do appreciate it. Um, but yeah, it's like I said, 49 days. It's I feel like it's been going pretty well so far. I what have I been up to? Um, so yeah, I quit my job at mid June, and I guess I started. I guess in July I was like, let's do the pod. Let's start a podcast. And then I moved down to Atlanta basically at the end of July, and you know it's been a good time. I basically haven't had a job. I quit my job in June, and I just actually started a job like this is like my third week starting this week. So I didn't have a job for a while, so it was a lot of just going to open mics and smoking weed and emailing people to try to get them on the podcast. That's what my last like 5 months have been like. So that's been good. Getting a new job, it's interesting because I can't talk to anybody about stand up. That's a thing about when, especially starting this podcast. It's interesting, right? To where, like in my previous job, I could talk about stand up. They kind of knew about it. People came to shows and shit. But now that I'm doing the podcast, I can't it's just like I don't want to talk to people about stand up initially because they're gonna be like, "Fucking, let me see some videos. Tell me a joke." And I'm just like, "Dog, duh." That is the last thing I want to do at work. You but now I have the podcast. Like if I show them a video and it's like my name is not Tank, that's it's like a nickname I've had since I was a kid. It's not my actual name. So if I show them a video and it's like, oh, Tank Smith, and and then they're like, oh, let me just Google Tank Smith, and it's like, oh wait, there's a podcast. Oh, what you admit to soliciting in a podcast? We're gonna need to talk about that. So yeah, I can't talk about stand up, which is interesting. Um, like my parents don't know about the podcast. Which is weird because I'll talk to them and they're like, "Hey, how's it going? What have you been up to? What are you doing tonight?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just recording. Oh no, I'm just not doing anything. I'm just hanging out." It's It's a lot of fun. But no, I'm trying to keep them on the deal for as long as possible. I'm not trying to have that conversation. I admit some things on earlier episodes of the podcast. And if they find out what's gonna happen, no, it'll be cool. Um, it's interesting though, just talking. I don't, I don't. It'll be. I don't know how my mom will. I don't know how to react. I can see my mom freaking out. I can see my dad, both of them freaking out. It's interesting. But we'll see what happens. Um, but other than that, it's just been getting used to Atlanta. I didn't. The traffic is here is incredible. It is. People talk shit about Atlanta traffic a lot, but until you're here, you're like, what? How's there fucking traffic at 11 p.m.? What is. Also, the chicken wing restaurants. How are there so many chicken wing restaurants? This episode today is just solely just like, hey, Atlanta, why are you eating so much goddamn chicken? I want to find out. If you're listening to the podcast right now and you got the answers, you're like, hey, Atlanta's known for its chicken wings and strip clubs also. Let me know. I'm trying to learn about the city. Well, yeah, just been doing open mics. The Atlanta comedy scene is fucking amazing. If you live in Atlanta and you have not been to like a local comedy show, you gotta get out there. You gotta laugh. There's like shows like every single day of the week, so you can definitely do it if you want to. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. Open mics, emailing people for the podcast, and now I have a job. So that's me. Uh, I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I did an AMA right at the beginning of October when I first started the podcast. Um, I was talking to my buddy, and like I kind of mentioned before, I never really told anybody, I guess, how much money I'd spent when I first kind of started up till now. Um, but like I was said it out loud. I was like, oh man, I definitely spent like at least like $10,000 in the last year seeing escorts, and and I kind of threw it out there, and then I started thinking about it. And I was like, holy shit, that's fucking like 100% accurate. It's more than that, but and so I did an AMA where I was like, hey, I spent $10,000 on escorts last year. Ask me anything, and I wasn't sure the reaction I would get. Um, that's not something that if you tell somebody that there's gonna be some negative reactions for sure, and curiosity definitely. But I could see it viewed in a negative light, and people like, what the fuck? What? Tell me more. So I did it, and a lot of people actually reached out, and a lot of people had great questions. And so what I wanted to do now is basically just go through those questions. And if you hear anything, like if there's maybe I got like 25 questions or so, but if you have any questions about the podcast, about seeing an escort, about anything, right into the podcast. I want to. I don't have to share your response. I can just write back to you. Our email address for the podcast, fullservicepod@gmail.com. It is on our Libsyn page. Go right to the episode, click on the link, and you can send an email to the podcast. Um, but yeah, this is my AMA for last year. I spent $10,000 on escorts. The first question was, do they ever roast you on body image? No, that's never happened ever. That's I'll do that shit. I'll roast myself because that's my thing. But I've never felt at all like shamed or anything like that. Definitely not. I've taken off my shirt and it's been like, oh, cool. It's everything's normal. But yeah, no, I've definitely never been roasted or anything or felt weird or made to feel weird. Next question was it worth it? As of right now, I'd say yeah, definitely worth it. Everything's great. Thumbs up. I did spend all my savings and I almost ran out of money, but I got a job, so everything's good. So as of right now, worth it 100%. And I got a fucking podcast. Who needs money when you have a podcast? Because then you use the podcast I don't know how to. Maybe you can get money at some point. I don't know. I don't know how it works yet. Somebody also asked, "Were you scared or nervous the first time?" Um, I don't think I was scared. Maybe a little nervous. Like I kind of mentioned it. I don't. I just am like a hopeful person. I kind of go into a lot of situations where I'm like, everything should work out in my favor. And yeah, but I was a little nervous for sure, because I didn't know what to expect. I'd never done this before, but I wasn't scared. Um, but yeah. Next question. It's not a question. It's a statement. It says "dumbass" and it has a kiss emoji. Thank you for that. The next question is: Are you a feminist? I would say yes. I'm a feminist. But I also say bitch when I'm alone sometimes to myself. So does that count? I really don't know. Somebody asked, "Have you considered hosting a show for the Travel Channel?" I have not considered hosting a show for the Travel Channel, but now that you mention it, it does sound like a good idea. I would like to travel and do whatever they need for me to do. To I don't fucking know. Um, Somebody asked, "How often are you tested? Is that something they'd ask you to bring?" For me, I guess it really just depends. It'd be like every few months. I guess the first time I ever got an STD test in my life was actually. So I started in May of 2018, and I guess the first test I ever got was maybe like July, maybe. Um, and that was done at. I was like started googling shit. I was like, where can I get STD tests? Everywhere, like it costs money to do it. But LGBT Center in Raleigh, I mentioned it before. Tuesday, Thursday, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Fucking free testing. You cannot beat that shit. All you literally fill out a form. Fill out a form. They'll take some blood. 2 weeks later, you get the test results. All good. Hopefully, it's all good for you. But yeah, so I'd say like it kind of depended on, I guess, how often I'd see people. But I guess the first time I did it, was in like June or July. I don't really remember. And then I went to New York in October for my birthday, and I saw a bunch of people then. And when I got back, my throat was hurting a lot. And everybody was giving me shit about it. And they're like, dog, you got that throat chlamydia, bro. You got that throat chlamydia, dog. And I was like, I don't, but also I'm nervous. So I went and I got tested. And I guess this is in November. And we had I have a Santa costume that I bought for for shows, and basically we did a big reveal where like Santa, I dressed up as Santa, and then I gave like my STD test results during this show, and all negative, baby. Fuck yeah, all negative. Um, and then I guess this year, I think I kind of was at the beginning of the year trying to like pause. I tried to take a little break. So I guess it was April, and then again in October, I think. Yeah, that sounds about right. So I guess it just depends. Um, and then is that something they'd ask you to bring? I've never been asked to bring like or show any kind of test results or anything like that. Um, yeah. The next question is not a question again, a statement. King of disposable income. A king no longer. I am no longer a king. I did have disposable income. It's all gone. Next question. How do you get an escort? For that one, I'm going to refer you to episode 5 of the podcast, baby. I got a podcast episode just on this. Um, but use Google. Whatever city you're in, Google. Blank City Escorts. I'm in Atlanta Escorts. If you're on Twitter, search hashtags. You can search date and then whatever city you're in. I'd search hashtag date Atlanta. Um, there's a few sites that I kind of like prefer. I'll use if I'm searching. I'll use Eros. I'll use Trist. I'll use Private Delights. I'll use Slixa. And Twitter's a good resource also. Use Twitter. But those are my four if I'm using a site. But go back, listen to episode 5, and hopefully that should help you. Um, Next question: did you take them to a buffet? I did not. Sadly, did not take them to a buffet. Next question: how many escorts have you been with? At this point, it is the mid 20s right now. Yeah, that's the answer. Um, Next question: you have a job. This isn't even a question. Another statement. You have a job. You're a comedian and a damn good one. Don't forget that. What a sweet person. What a sweet person. Just fucking compliment me out here. Maybe I wrote that. Maybe. Appreciate that. I won't forget that. The next question. It's an actual question. Why? Not judging, just genuinely curious. So I kind of mentioned this. I'd gotten out of a long relationship. I was like 8.5 years, from like 19 to 28. So when I got out, I was like, I don't know which way was up. I don't know shit, you know. And I didn't feel like being vulnerable. I guess with another person yet, and I I saw that as the best option, I guess. Um, and yeah, so I took the plunge and I decided to try it, and shit was dope. Yeah. Is it tax deductible? That's the next question. I don't know. If you know, let me know. I don't think it's maybe it could be tax deductible for the podcast. Does it? I don't know. If you know, write into the podcast. If you're a tax attorney, you know some shit. Let me know. The next question is, what's his name? Rusty Shackelford is the name of the escort that I saw. Next question. What is an egg? What does getting an egg cracked over your head feel like? There's a little backstory for that question. So in 10th grade, I was 15 years old, and I egged my teacher's house, my English teacher, Mrs. Merritt. What a sweet lady she was. She was really nice. She was really nice, and me and a couple people, we threw eggs at her house and her car, and I feel really bad about it. And then my dad found out because somebody who saw us throwing eggs at her house gave the description to her that there was a fat black kid running away. And sadly, I was the only fat black kid in her class, and she knew it was me immediately. And I got busted, and then my parents found out, and then my dad stood me in the backyard and threw eggs at me, and then cracked an egg over my head to teach me a lesson about being an asshole. And so, how does that feel? It feels gooey. It feels wet. It feels yeah. That's that's how it felt. Um, what next question? What's the difference between a cheap and an expensive escort? Um, I guess I would say like the level of intimacy that the session is, or how the session I guess goes. Um, yeah, some people you get there and it's like just like a business thing immediately. It's like this is what you came for. That's it. But other times it's more like we're talking and it's like a fucking friendly. I don't. It's I guess just the level of intimacy. You know, there's different levels. I don't fucking. That was an interesting one. What's oh yeah, next question. One $10,000 escort or 10 $1,000 escorts. I'd go with the 10 $1,000 escorts. That's just me personally, but who knows that 10,000? Who that could be amazing. Um, Funniest moment with an escort. Um, for me personally, I think losing an erection is pretty funny. So that's 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 probably my funniest story. Really, it's nothing good. But I'd say a cool story. If you want a cool story, um, like I said, I went to New York last year, and I was there for like four, I guess like 6 days. I ended up seeing like 5 people. And when I left New York on a Monday, I'm like a fucking crackhead at this point, like a fiend. Right? I'm like, I gotta see somebody like immediately. And I fly back to Raleigh, and I ended up going to see this girl who's from Ukraine, right? And her English wasn't that good, so we had to use like Google Translate to communicate. And so it'd be basically like she'd say something to me in Ukrainian, and then it's her phone would spit something out to me in English, and then I'd say something back in English, translate it back into Ukrainian, and then she'd say it was cool. We had a conversation. We talked about like Ukrainian Russian tension and like the Ukrainian culture and shit. It was a good time. And I guess also in when I was in New York, right? I uh, I saw a girl on Sunday morning, and it was like maybe like 11 o'clock, and I was in a fantasy football league at the time, to where like if you lose the previous week, you have to chug a beer before 1 o'clock of the next week, or else you lose your top player for that week. So I'm at this girl's place, and I realize I'm like, oh shit, it's Sunday, and I haven't done my chug yet. If I don't do this chug before 1, I'm gonna lose my top player. What am I gonna do? And we didn't have any beer, and so she basically called a beer delivery service to bring beer to her apartment so that I could do the chug, so I didn't lose my top player. Fucking amazing. It was. I'm still grateful to this day. I did not win the league, but I don't even know if I won that game, but still fucking cool ass move. That was shall remember that forever. Um, Another question. Why? Um, yeah, like I said earlier, I'd been out of a long relationship. Um, I I didn't I didn't want to get back anything. Definitely didn't want to get back into another relationship, and I guess I didn't want to put myself out there, be vulnerable with another person. So I saw this as the easier route. So that's what I chose to do. Next question: what do escorts love about their jobs? For me, talking to people, it's really just like the autonomy over your life. You know, you choose who you want to see when you want to work. You have freedom. You're not beholden to anybody else. You basically work for yourself. You're your own boss. So that's, yeah, freedom and autonomy. You know, everybody everybody wants that, but nobody. It's hard to do, and so it's fucking respectable. Um, what's the least and most amount of money you've spent seeing an escort? Least amount of money, $120. Most amount of money, $800. Um, what are good sites? I kind of mentioned it before. If I'm trying to find an escort to see, I'm gonna go on Trist. I'm gonna go on Private Delights. I'm gonna go on Slixa, and I'm gonna go on Eros, or the top four that I'm gonna see. But I kind of mentioned in episode 5, you're really kind of beholden to what location you're in. You know, you're only going to be able to see people off sites where people are advertising in that area. You know, so if people aren't using Eros and you try to use Eros, you're not going to be able to see anybody. So it really depends on your location. But yeah, top four: Trist, Eros, Slixa, and Private Delights, and also Twitter. Use Twitter for sure. Next question. This is my favorite one. Are you better at sex? Who knows? I really have no idea. I hope so, but the I think the cat's out of the bag on that one. I don't think that's the right analogy. But no, I think time will tell. That's a better one. But no, that's those are the questions that people asked. That's those shout out. That's all separate people. I actually didn't get anybody asked like multiple questions. So that's all separate people reached out. So I really do appreciate it. You're making the podcast better. You can't do this without you. And also, if you have any questions, like I said before, if you have any questions, I definitely did not answer. That's only a few questions I answered. If you have any questions or want to know anything, reach out to me. I fullservicepod at gmail.com. I'll help anybody that I can. I want to. I'm trying to spread the good news. But yeah, I realize if you're listening to this podcast, I've only had a few people like reach out to me. So I want to know like who's listening to the podcast, because I really have no idea. Like I'm pretty like I said, we had 33 states and 10 countries have listened to the podcast. So I'm pretty sure we have at least like 43 or 44 people that listen to the podcast. So just write in, let me know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what you like to see on the podcast, what topics you'd like to see discussed, any people you'd like to see on the podcast. Reach out to me. I'll reach out to them. We'll see if we can make it happen. Because this is not a I don't want just my perspective on the podcast. I understand people that I know people that are listening to the podcast have either been like Storm. She's been escorting for 18 years. I've been seeing escorts for not even 2 years. And there's people that have been seeing escorts for 18 years or longer than that. So I want to hear everybody's experiences. And if you feel like you want to share your story, fucking reach out, do it. I'm not, I can't judge anybody. I'm right there with you. We're doing the same thing. So reach out for sure. I got a lot of. I'm excited about the future of the podcast. As of right now, I have 6 interviews lined up that I have not released yet, and I got a few that I'm going to be doing in the next couple of weeks that I'm excited about. But I'm trying to get so many different people on the podcast. I've done one so far. All the episodes so far, it's all been female escorts. I have done one interview with a male escort, but I do not know if I want to use it. It's like I think it's like 18 minutes total, and the sound on it fucking sucks. We're in a hotel room, and it's like we're on this sitting on like a squeaky ass couch, so you can just like hear the couch moving, and then like anytime you like set like anything on the table, it's just like dang. So it's like I don't know if I want to use the episode, but no, I need more male escorts. I've reached out to a few. It's hard to. I don't really know where to find them. So if you got the scoop on the male escort game in Atlanta, holla at me. I'm trying to find out. Want to get trans escorts? I'm looking for dominatrixes, dominatri. What's plural of dominatrix? I'm looking for people that cuddle. Looking at people that sell stuff online. If you do OnlyFans, if you do Snapchat, if you do mini vids, I want to talk to a lawyer. I want to talk about prostitution laws in Georgia. I do. So if you're a lawyer out there, or if you're gonna be a lawyer, or you're saw like Law and Order on TV once, and you feel like you could talk about this, so reach out to the podcast. If you tell me that you just only saw Law and Order, but you're like qualified, then hey, I'll consider it, and we're gonna sit down and we're gonna record the goddamn podcast. I tweeted this earlier today. If you live within like 5 hours of Atlanta, I will drive to you. I'll come. We'll come do the podcast. All I need for this podcast is a laptop and a microphone, which I'll bring that shit with me. We'll do this. Episode wherever. I also tweeted yesterday. If you want to shout out on the podcast, write into the podcast, and I will shout. I'll give you all the free publicity you want. All you got to do, let me know. Holla at your boy. The only person that replied to me, Andrew Gleason. Shout out to Andrew Gleason. He's a comic based out of Chapel Hill. His Instagram, Andrew Gleason NC. That's Andrew. You know how to spell Andrew? GLEASON NC. Holla, give him a follow on Instagram. He has a podcast that he hosts with Justin McNeil. It's called Humor and Mistakes. It's a comedy podcast focused on personal growth and life positivity. Give them a follow. Give that podcast a listen if you want ads, baby. I got ads on ads on ads. But sadly, no product to advertise. Except for Tecate and Diet Coke and chocolate milk. I'm looking at all the things that are on my desk right now. Gotta stay hydrated out there. But no, I appreciate you listening. This has been episode 8. want to keep it short for you guys. I know we've been had a long couple interviews, the last couple interviews, so I want to keep it short and sweet. Just give you a little bit of update on where the podcast is at, where I'm at, where we want to go going forward. We'll be here every single Tuesday. Um, we're on, like I said before, we're on every podcast platform that has ever been created since the history of podcasts. So no matter where you listen to us from, I appreciate it. Subscribe, baby, subscribe. Rate the podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, write us a review. If you don't like the podcast, tell me why. Right there on Apple, baby. You don't even gotta tell me. Just it's anonymous. I have no idea who you are. Just write in. It really does help for visibility for new podcasts. So if you want to write in fucking you're amazing already for even listening to this. But yeah, I wanna have input from everybody. So if you feel a certain way about the podcast, let me know. Holla. I can't say it enough. I probably have said it too much already. Uh, we have social media, Instagram, Twitter at Full Service Pod. My personal Instagram and Twitter is at Tank Funkadelic. Follow me if you feel so inclined, but follow the podcast. That's more important, baby. Um, Next week, we're looking forward. We're looking into the future. Next week, episode 9, if I'm correct in my math. I have Lily Valentine. I'm excited. I recorded this a little while ago. Um, she's based escort based in Atlanta. She's been working as an escort the past like 8 or 9 years. We talk about like her move from Athens to Atlanta. It's a good time. So fucking we'll be back. Subscribe, review, rate, tell your friends, tell your parents. Because I can't. Don't tell my parents. Tell your parents. But no, thanks for listening. We will be back next Tuesday. I'm Tank Smith. This is the Full Service Podcast. Thanks. Full Service.